What's going on, guys? Andrew Newbark Gaming back here today, and welcome to Newbark News for February 12th, 2019. Now, starting off today's news feed, we've got an article coming to us from The Verge detailing how successful the new Battle Royale game launched by Respawn, who just so happens to have parent company of EA, is so far. Now, currently, the game's only been out a week, and they're already rocking a player base of about 25 million registered players, which is absolutely insane in terms of success, especially when you're looking at a game that is somewhat comparable to it in that it's also a Battle Royale style game, and it's also free to play, being Fortnite, which is arguably the most popular game amongst the general public right now. It took them 4 months to reach a 45 million player registered user base. Now, what is that? Is that Apex Legends is necessarily a better game? That I don't think we can necessarily say for sure, especially considering it is so early on. I think we'll have to give it some time to see if that turns out to be the case or not, and being somebody who's not necessarily super interested in the Battle Royale style game, I'm not a good judge of that type of thing. But what I can say is I think that Fortnite managed to successfully carve out a place in the market for games of this Battle Royale type of genre, and thus creating a thirst amongst the video game player base for more games of this type that kind of put their own twist and spin on the already proven formula. And it seems Apex Legends may have successfully done that. And that being said, it's also coming from a developer which has been in the industry for a lot of years, regardless of your feelings towards EA. They are well defined, they're kind of niche within the gaming market, and as a result, putting out a decent product with a big name behind it, with obviously a genre that people are interested in, would give them a pretty good launch base. Now, adding on to that, it does seem like EA's already got plans for majorly supporting this. It's already only been out a week, but they're planning to launch their first ever esports tournament, and they're also going to be kicking off a Valentine's Day themed type of loot dropping system that's going to be implemented during this week, because obviously Valentine's Day is this week. So with that being the case, it shows that they're already showing some pretty good support to this. Honestly, with the whole free-to-play Battle Royale style thing, I think that kind of goes in pretty well with what EA's been doing a lot recently. They've had a lot of games with microtransaction-focused purchases, and free-to-play games usually kind of go hand-in-hand with that, so I guess that kind of just makes sense to me. We'll just have to wait and see how this game develops in terms of comparison to Fortnite. Once more, I'm not super into Battle Royale, so I'm not your best person to analyze that type of thing, but I think it is neat to see how rapidly this is expanding. Just shows how much of a thirst there is for these types of games, and I think it could be something that we see explode, similar to how we saw the sandbox genre explode after Minecraft saw such massive success. So with all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and move on to our second article for the day. And this one's also going to be coming to us from The Verge, and it's about the fact that the PlayStation 1 Classic is now down to $40 at Walmart, or $30.99, technically speaking. But regardless, this was supposed to be kind of like an emulation box type of device, similar to what the Super Nintendo Classic and the NES Classic were, put out by the developer that actually originally made the system. And given how the SNES Classic and the NES Classic saw massive success, PlayStation figured they'd hop on the hype train with this. Well, turns out it was a massive flop. The system was supposed to retail for $100 within just like 2-3 weeks of its launch, something in that relative time frame. It was already starting to see some price drops. Within a couple months, it was down to like $60 most places. Now you're seeing it reach $40, which is even below the already cheaper to begin with Super Nintendo and NES Classics respectively. Now, something decent to point out about this is $40 is a pretty cheap price range. It does come with 20 pre-installed games, and while most people would agree this isn't necessarily the best representation of the PlayStation's library as a whole, especially considering you're missing titles like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, etc. And while a lot of those titles have seen recent remakes, some of the people going after the system are definitely seeking more of the nostalgic, I guess, pseudo-authentic feel of playing on a PlayStation 1 again. At least I know that's a lot of the reason why I enjoy playing games on the Super Nintendo Classic, as opposed to necessarily just buying them off like the eShop, buying a GBA remake or something like that they've made, as it feels at least a little bit closer to the original system to me. So I'd imagine there's definitely a market for that. So with the new price point, the nostalgic factor it can implement, and the fact that recently a lot of the hacking that people implemented on systems like the Super Nintendo Classic to expand its library to be absolutely massive, there's definitely some potential here for this to be a really good buy, especially at this price point. And given how the console didn't succeed all that well, I'd imagine Sony isn't going to be producing a whole ton more of them, especially with how quickly they gave up on the Vita after that didn't succeed, and that was actually a really cool console. So with that being the case, there might be a relatively limited run of these, so if the PlayStation Classic was something that you were at all interested in, now may be a pretty decent time to pick one up. Once more, it's $40 at Walmart right now. Not too expensive of a price point. In terms of controllers, while it kind of sucks, it only comes with one 8-bit. Does put out a Bluetooth adapter you can use to connect DualShock 4 controllers from PlayStation 4 to it for about 20 bucks, so that's not too bad of a price point there. Figure you've got the one controller that comes with it. Then you can use a DualShock 4 for an additional 20. You've got a 2-controller PlayStation 1 Classic that you can probably hack pretty easily if you're into that type of thing for about 60 bucks. So that's some decent price points if you're asking me. So let's go ahead and move on to our third article for the day, guys. And this one's going to be coming to us from GameSpot, and that is Nintendo has officially confirmed there's going to be a Nintendo Direct coming to us tomorrow. Now, this is going to be coming at a variety of different times depending on what time zone you're in, so see the article in the link that I include in the description below if you're interested in exact time frames. Not going to cover all of those, but supposedly it's going to be about 25 minutes, and it's definitely going to have information on the new Fire Emblem game. We also know Nintendo has a number of other first-party titles in development right now. You've got a main series Pokemon gaming coming at some point. We know Metroid's had a lot of shifts in development. Perhaps they'll end up porting something like the Metroid Prime trilogy to Switch, which would be really awesome. We know Animal Crossing is being worked on. We know Game Freak, who's developing Pokemon, is working on another game at the moment. So any or none of those could all be included in this Nintendo Direct, but about 35 minutes just to talk about one game seems like it could potentially be a little surprising to me. Another topic of interest that they may be including here is perhaps the next Super Smash Bros. DLC, which is supposed to be Joker from Persona 5, and being a huge Persona fan myself, at least of Persona 4, which is my first exposure to the series, having a Persona character in Smash Brothers sounds absolutely awesome. Would be a nice way to reincite my interest in that game, given how I got a lot of games at the same time, sort of fell off for a bit, but different story for a different day. Regardless, this is really cool information. I will be trying to do a video covering what's talked about in the Nintendo Direct within an hour or two of when it gets put out tomorrow, so be sure to stay tuned to the channel for that if you're interested in those types of things. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to our fourth article for the day. This was going to be detailing the fact that Sony has appointed a new president in terms of handling everything in regards to PlayStation, aka Sony Interactive Entertainment division of the company. So this is going to be a man by the name of Jim Ryan. Now before this, Jim Ryan was known as the deputy president of Sony Interactive Entertainment, and now he's going to be the full-on CEO. Apparently the appointing date is April 1st, 2019, and kind of ironic there, but they seem very serious about this decision, and before this guy has held several positions within Sony as a company. Now, quick note on this guy, he's also the person who was kind of explaining why Sony didn't want to participate in cross-platform play back in like somewhere around 2017, because he didn't like the idea that they couldn't completely control all the content going into it, which to me sounds a little bit ludicrous. It sounds like it may just be an excuse to point out what I've used to explain why Sony probably doesn't participate in cross-platform play several times on the podcast, being that, well, perhaps it's just because, hey, we're winning this console generation, you want to play with your friends, you're going to have to get a PlayStation 2. So sort of asserting their dominance type of thing. But what's a little more interesting to me about this article is supposedly Sony's most profitable portion of their company now is the PlayStation chunk. And they seem to be putting a lot of emphasis on trying to continue to drive forward video games in their company now that they've acknowledged it as being the most important aspect of the company from a money perspective. So given PlayStation's already given us a lot of great products this generation, the previous generation, and just generally being an overall pretty consistent company to have good expectations for the most part, obviously everybody has their sore patches, then this being a development, the fact that they're switching around some bosses, some people in it, they seem to be putting a lot more focus on PlayStation, has me really even more excited for the PlayStation 5 and the possibilities that could come with it. Now, I'm not going to get too into that because we're a little too far out without a whole lot of solid rumors to run off of, but this is just very exciting in terms of Sony overall. It is a little bit concerning that this is the same guy who didn't like cross-platform play in the past, or at least was the deliverer of the message, I should say, but things overall seem pretty optimistic there. So let's go ahead and move on to our fifth article for the day. And this one is in regards to the game Rocket League, which currently sports cross-platform play between the Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. By the way, this article is coming from Kotaku, and apparently they're going to be implementing it so that you have basically what's an in-games friends list that's compatible with your friends from any of the systems that are participating in it, i.e. you could see your friends from Rocket League on the Switch while you're playing on your PlayStation 4, which is really, really cool. I think that's showing an enhanced compatibility between this whole cross-platform play system, makes it work a little bit better for people people, especially considering perhaps they can add something like in-game chat that works with it as well. And if that's the case, then the whole idea of needing, like, oh, if I want to be in a party with my friends while playing the game, I either need a separate device to use something like Discord, or they need to be on the same console as me to begin with. So this just shows further development in the cross-play platform. Not so concerned about the idea of the Rocket League thing. I think the bigger point here is the idea that companies are buying into this idea more and more, and I think it's a good development for the industry as a whole because it encourages diversity of console purchases versus just one console gets a good start with its internet play, so then in order for you to play with your friends, you need that console as well. With the whole cross-platform play, it just broadens that horizon a lot. So with all that being said, guys, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Newbark News. As per usual, be sure to let me know your thoughts, comments, theories, etc. in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If not, constructive criticism is always welcome, and I'll catch you guys next time with more Newbark News.